Yeah, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for your patience. We're so elated to have Dr. Rajesh here with us, who is the Assistant Director of AI Solutions of the Division of IT at University of Maryland and a Research Fellow again at the AI Collaboratory to talk to us for the next hour about the Legacy of Slavery Project, but ChatGPT. So Dr. Rajesh, we're here in person as well as in the virtual. We have our colleague, Professor Sandra Washington. Her class is joining us virtually. And we have a group of, all right, everybody, a wonderful colleagues. And so after your presentation, which we're all excited about, we'll have time for questions. So again, thank you so much for lending your expertise and your time and talent to us today.
Absolutely. The pleasure is mine. Thanks a lot, Dr. Smith, for the introduction. I wanted to present a couple slides. I know it's an hands-on, there is a hands-on portion to this. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Um, my name is Rajesh Kumar Gnanasekaran. Here we are. I'm here to present on the data analysis using generative AI on a unique data set from the Legacy of Slavery dataset collection with the Maryland State Archives. We wanted to kind of like do some sort of hands-on exercise as part of this 1 hour, but I'll just go, a little bit. I'll just give an introduction on what the data set is about and how we, created a custom GPT. So you can all collaborate or like chat against it there. Let me just jump right into the data set itself. So domestic traffic ads data set. Again, Maryland State Archives has a special set of collections called Legacy of Slavery, which are about 16 data set collections. One of them is the domestic traffic ads. What this collection is about, or this data set is about, is basically digitized or digitally transcribed information of the newspaper advertisements that were placed by slave traders or slave owners between 1824 to 1864 in the state of Maryland across different counties to buy or sell enslaved individuals throughout the state of Maryland. And these are all newspaper cuttings from like the advertisements that were published. And you can see a couple of them, a couple of those examples here. So what Maryland State Archives has done is they have, I think Dr. Marciano or Lori might have touched a little bit on the entire project itself, but they have took volunteers and their own staff to digitally transcribe key features from each of these advertisements into a data set, and which could be found as a publicly available data set from their website, from MSA's website. And you can see that from the screenshot of the website that there are about 2,800 odd domestic traffic ads, dating from 1824 to 1864. And for this particular purpose, to kind of perform data analysis using generative AI tools rather than traditional non-AI tools, we have reduced, or we took a sample of that 2,800 plus data sets, records in the data set, to about 700 odd records, just to see how it will perform with the data analysis portion. These are some of the actual features after the digital transcription and the extraction of the data from the MSA's database. You can see this is a CSV screenshot of what it looks like. It has the date of the ad where it was published and who published it, or the title of that ad and what type of ad it is. It is a sale or buy, and the age specified for the individuals who were being sold or traded. And then which county in Maryland they were being offered, or this actual advertisement was offered, and gender of the enslaved individuals and the number of people within the ad, and so on. And what we, for this purpose, because generative AI, I'll jump into this slide because this gives more context. So what we are planning to do with this particular step is that we know ChatGPT as a tool where you can converse with it based on its pre-trained knowledge from internet, like it has been learning on data from the commonly available data on internet, and that kind of forms the basis of ChatGPT. Even if we have to take a step back, it's the large language model or LLM that they call these days. Being trained on this data, and it understands natural language statements, and it can converse with the users by generating human-like text and images. You may have used ChatGPT or you may not have, but it's basically like a chatbot where you can go in and ask it questions. You can assume that it knows most of the whatever language you are conversing it with. It can understand what you're asking it about, and it can converse or talk back with a human-like text. So we were like, okay, if it can do this, can it do data analysis as well, right? So I mean, you can ask it questions and it can respond back, but can we give more data, like or data that's specific to your problem or your project, and then can it use that data to perform analysis on it through natural language queries rather than using tools like SQL or Tableau where you'll have to bring in the data set and then bring in the columns. You need to have some sort of technical background to use those tools. So in this project, we were like, okay, can we do this without all of that information, without all of that knowledge by the end user? So we were like, okay, we can try this out. And apparently, there is a feature within the ChatGPT space called agents, which allows us to do some of this analysis. And why is this beneficial or valuable? Because and as an end user, you don't have to worry about the column names of the underlying data set that you are going to be uploading it. For example, and here, if it was a traditional, even on Excel or any other data analysis tool, you need to be aware of what columns you're filtering against or querying against or pulling in into your queries. But with ChatGPT's analysis, you don't have to know that. So that's the primary benefit because when you ask it a question in natural language statements, it will use the keywords to semantically match with the columns in the spreadsheet by itself, and it'll try to do aggregations or groupings or try to do its filters behind the scenes by converting it into Python code. Um, it's also been evolving. When we looked at it like a year ago, it wasn't able to create charts or visualizations, rather it was just text-based. But now the ChatGPT platform allows to create visualizations or charts based on the questions and the responses it curates. Um, and it's very quick to set it up. I will just go over that in the next slide to see how I set the custom GPT. But that's what we're going to do. I'll show how I set up the custom GPT. I have a Plus license, so you can create a GPT or a custom GPT with that, but you can access the GPT once it's published as a free user as well. So I will show you how I set it up, and there are also instructions in the slide here on how to actually. I have a link to the custom GPT they had created, and there are some links to how to basically sign up to ChatGPT if you're not a ChatGPT user yet. But you don't have to pay anything at the moment, so you can just sign it up and use it as a free user. So let me go to this link here. This is the custom GPT that I have created for the actually, let's see. This is a different design of this. All right, I'm just gonna show you how quickly how I configure this custom GPT, which we are calling as Chat LOS dash DTA, LOS for legacy of slavery, DTA for domestic traffic ads. It's fairly easy to set up. Basically, you just give it a name and description of what you're, you know, going to create this for. And these are the key features of this custom GPT. I just uploaded the spreadsheet that I was showing here, the 764 records worth of data. I have that as a CSV file. I just uploaded that file from my PC, and I enabled image generation. I don't think we need this for the data analysis, but it was all checked by default. You can leave them there if you want to be creative and ask some image generation piece. It'll do that for you. But the key piece where you need to check is the data analysis portion. Code interpreter is for like writing Python code. If you wanted to write some code for you, it can do that. But the key piece which will help our project is the data analysis portion. So I checked that. And I did not give any instructions. So ideally with generative AI, an important piece is a prompt. So if an instruction prompt or a system prompt or something, you can get as detailed as you want. Just giving it instructions like what is this data set about and what do you want the data set to do. So give it a generic prompt, or you can get as specific as you want. But I just left it without any of these prompts here just to see how it does. And you just create it. Now, since I've already created it, it shows me an update button. But so what it does is it takes all this data and then runs data analysis behind the scenes on the fly. So we'll see. I'm just going to go back and then bring back some of the questions that I had asked the this custom bot. And I started by saying, hey, what do you know? What is this context about to this particular custom GPT? And it comes back with saying, hey, this is about the dataset name, and it is kind of loading all that context in its memory. And then saying, okay, these are about historical sale advertisements with all these following field names, demographic information. It is trying to group those fields under different categories. And now this data set likely contains historical sales advertisements related to all these, different types of sales on enslaved individuals. So all I did was just upload the data set, and I just started asking questions directly. So I did not give it any other information, not even a prompt saying do this, do that. So I just started asking questions directly. And I said, how many ads are in this data set? It says there are 764 advertisements. So it can also show you what exact code it ran to come up with that. So you can see that it converts my question into a Python code behind the scenes to run against that particular CSV I had uploaded. And it also shows what's the result. And then it uses that result to come up with these, like a summary response or like a natural language text response. And what was also unique with the new feature they have rolled out is it was able to give me suggestions on what questions I can ask against this data set if you don't know where to start, or, so it's kind of like, okay, you can, based on the data that I see, you can ask questions like this. So this was some of the questions that it asked me to, or it recommended me to ask. And I asked like what trends exist by advertisement date. Then it gave me the number of advertisements by year. And you can make it an interactive visualization. So you can see that it's starting to create visualizations right off the bat without instructions or any of these columns being added to any dashboard or anything like that. And that it also gives me some information on what trends it sees between the years on the actual advertisements that were placed. You can see here there was a spike here on 1831, which we'll get to later. And I kept asking it what types of sales were most common, and it's given me like a count of what ads, the sale type, and the number of ads for each of those sale type. And what's key about this is the aggregation feature. So when you before the data analysis part, like when you go to ChatGPT and ask it a question, it can come back with the response from its pre-trained knowledge. Even with uploading a PDF or something, it'll come back with responses. But what it's doing here is powerful because it's kind of taking the entire data set as a whole and doing aggregation analysis on top of that. So that's more powerful because we are using the latest version, GPT 4.0, which has a larger context window, which means it can hold more content in its memory within each session. So it is able to kind of use up that entire data set and then come up with these aggregate responses. So, some other questions like analyze ad trends by gender. So it's saying how many male individuals were, present in the ads, how many female. Um, you know, some of the ads had both genders referenced because there were multiple people sold in that particular ad. And it's also like, can you show trends by county? So it's like how many ads were placed by each county within Maryland, Baltimore County, Dorchester, Queen Anne's, and such. Um, and so on, right? So you get the idea of like, okay, it can create image charts, it can also give text, it can look at the data set as holistically and do some aggregation and everything. So, and what we also noticed was that, you know, at one part where I asked it a question saying, why do you think there are many ads in 1832 than others? Is there anything significant about this here within the context? So this is more like natural language. I'm trying to prod the chatbot on like, okay, you're giving me these trends, like how is it useful to me? Like why are some of these, why do I see some of these spikes? So that is when it's actually trying to pull in information external to the data set. It's using the pre-trained information and saying, okay, I see there are some spikes between 1831 to 32. These are some of the possible reasons, right? So there's economic instability or recession. The early 1830s were marked by financial crisis and market instability. So maybe that's why the slave owners wanted to sell their, individuals so that they can liquidate them because they are in an unstable position. That's also this key thing that it identified without any historical knowledge being fed into this. It's able to identify that there was a Nat Turner's rebellion during that period. During that rebellion, there was a slave revolt in Virginia. Although this did not take place directly with Maryland, it sent shockwaves across southern and nearby regions. Because of this, many slaveholders heightened control over enslaved people and sought to sell or relocate them out of fear of rebellion spreading. This could explain a rise in advertisements for enslaved individuals. So it's kind of bringing in that little bit of historical context, and it's trying to say, okay, it could be because of this. So it's trying to make those connections behind the scenes, which we thought, okay, this was cool. And it also says that there could have been a cholera epidemic in that area in Baltimore, which might have led to, disease outbreaks, and eventually the businesses want to sell their, enslaved individuals to get rid of them because of the disease. So we could see that it's able to use both pre-trained information and the information that was provided to marry that together and come up with some reasonable responses. We don't know. That's the piece because we don't know if this was historically correct. It does not definitively say these are the reasons. It just kind of says this could be some of the reasons. So that's one thing to note about here. I think I wanted to stop here and then see if you have any questions at the moment, and take a pause here because the next step would be for us to go and actually get hands-on. So this GPT here is available for anybody to use because it's public data at the moment. So I've shared it with anybody who has access to ChatGPT, but to reach or chat against it, you need to sign up for ChatGPT using your personal email address. You don't have to pay. It's not a, you can, if you don't pay for it, you can still access or perform analysis on it. But I think it's limited. I think you can only ask like 4 or 5 questions at the minimum every day for data analysis. So uh, that's a caveat that I want to throw. But for now, there are some instructions here. If you want, I can walk through the steps on like how to sign up for this and stuff, but it's very simple. It's explanatory, where you just have to use your Google or Microsoft or Apple account to sign in, and then once you're signed in, it's ready for you to chat against this chat LOS-DTA, a custom GPT. I also have a list of questions that you can ask if you if you don't know what to ask, or if you want to get started, or it might even give you some recommendations on its own after you log in, or if you just start asking one question against it. So I want to take a pause here and then check if you can try and log in or create an account and try and log into this. I'll also put the link to the oh yeah, thanks, Dr. Marcino. He shared the chat LOSDTA link to the Zoom chat as well. So I want to take a pause here and see if you have any questions at the moment. So what we wanted to do also is like after you've signed up and you've asked some questions, we want to come back and then like maybe share what your experiences were or some feedback on how it performed, or if you have any questions that you want me to ask, since I have this bot open here, I can ask it on your behalf so you can all see it on the screen on what it responds with. Or if you kind of hit the limit using the free account, and if you still have some more questions, you can share that here so I can ask. We can all see what it does. Let me start asking some of these questions from my end. You can see that when I asked it, it says analyzing. Um, read. Okay, so it's trying to correct itself. So what I asked it to do was, can you create a table showing the number of ads placed by each county in the state? Um, and then it came back with this response. So I can download this as a data set. I think it will, let me see what it downloads as. It downloaded as a CSV file. So that's another unique and cool feature where you can like create a table out of this and download it if you want to. And you can also see what exact code it ran behind the scenes. Um, what you can see here is that it was able to identify county as the column name from the CSV that we had uploaded by itself, although we just asked it to say, oh, how many, give me number of ads per county. Uh, and like I was saying, these are the recommendations that came up with. You know, says show child-related ads by county, analyze orphan-related ads in the data set and all of that. So it kind of like analyzes the data set behind the scenes. It comes up with some recommendations. I'm gonna ask some other questions that I have on the document. So here, this is another unique thing. If you noticed, um, I asked, can you report ad counts for both public auctions and public sales? It does not um, have anything specifically called out as public action auctions, but it only has public sales. So it's able to come up with a distinction saying, okay, public sale is the primary term used for these types. There's no public auction. If you'd like, we can explore alternative terms of further breakdowns of this within public sales. I had this question because in a traditional data analysis tool, you need to you need to say what exact filters or values that you have to use for each column when you're filtering it down. But here you can just come and ask it without the deep understanding of these column information, but it'll use what it has, and then it'll kind of like keep it conversational and ask for input from you to correct it if you gave it an incorrect column name or something. So that's another um, added value for the end users. So if they're not aware of what they're asking about fully, it kind of nudges them in the right direction. Um, so this was another question that I wanted to ask it, but uh, this was actually one of the um, questions that actually was brought up by the director of Maryland State Archives, Chris Haley. He was like interested in knowing why, or like if there were any unique patterns in the domestic traffic ads. Like did the ads get placed on holidays, or is it just similar to what we saw with economic instability and such? So the slave owners are trying to sell the enslaved individuals during any holiday so that they can liquidate and, spend some of the money. So one of the things that came up was like, and can it find if there were any ads placed on Christmas Day? So it needs to understand Christmas Day falls on a specific day. So a specific day of the year, and it needs to map it back to you know, the fields within the data within the spreadsheet that I had shared, right? So if you can see, I asked it Christmas Day, but it's able to change or convert that natural language word to something like this, right? So it knows add date is what we were looking for, and then month is 12, which is December, and then date is 25, December 25th. So it's trying to parse that the input data set column names or columns to that particular values and see if it can find anything. And it came back with saying there were 5 ads placed on Christmas Day in the year 1824. This was the only year in the data set with advertisements on December 25th. So it's able to make that connection from natural language text to the actual translation behind the scenes to numeric or the quantitative data in the data set. And there were other features in the data set. Let me also share the data set itself. One second. So these are some of the other fields in the data set. There is a field called skills, um, which basically notes what skills either the owners who are selling or who is requesting for is looking for in their individuals. So I'm going to filter it by cook because the next question is based on that. So I was like, how many cooks were on sale? See if it can identify that. Um, there were 2 ads in the data set mentioning a quick cook for sale. Oh, it's looking for the different field here. So, all right. So this is one of the um, limitations you could see because I wanted it to actually look at the skill specified field and filter it by that, but it actually looked for cook for sale in the ads here. So that's a limitation. So again, we don't have control over which field it will use. So maybe I can rephrase the question and say, um, how many ads were placed? Skills. Let's see how it performs with this. Yeah, it's still not able to fix on it's looking at features. Yeah, as you can see, it's not like perfect. See if my data set has everything in it. Yeah, that's the right data set. Yeah, I'm looking for this information to say like, hey, it has 33 ads for all of them with skills as cooks. Go back and create a new chat. I'll open a new chat. No, it's not using that. Um, okay. I think yeah, I'll have to look at it, but this is another limitation, right? So you can ask it questions in natural language, but then it will pivot to whatever it feels like it thinks is the best field to use. Um, but again, I think you could update it by prompting or something. We could say like, hey, connect your questions or keywords within the um, incoming or input questions to match against the relevant fields and don't stray away and all of that stuff. Let me see if I can ask what are the job roles are coming. Yeah, it's coming back with it uses ad title again to come up with some of these groupings for sale and sheriff sale, constable sale, public sale, and all of that stuff. Let me ask it some other question. I'm asking how many ads were placed for individuals with ages less than 10. So I wanted to use like the age field. Okay, I think it's doing well with this one. So there are 51 ads in the data set placed for individuals with ages less than 10. So I can see that it's using the age specified field, and it's doing some sort of filtering behind the scenes to come up with that number. And I think this one is right. Let me clear that. Yeah. So if I filter it on Excel, it comes back as 51 ads for the age less than 10. Those are some of the questions that I had asked and or I had in mind. If you have any questions that you want me to try, please let me know in the chat or just let Dr. Marciana know or Dr. Smith.
Professor Rajesh, thank you so much.
Oh,
Let's
no problem.
This is also fascinating and very new to me, so I appreciate this. If no one has any questions immediately, I have a question.
Yes.
Actually, just a question I think about for you that I also similarly asked Professor Perrin. What are some of the implications that you see of using these tools and technology for research, particularly like thinking of the records enslaved or those communities that have been historically undervalued and marginalized? What do you think some of the implications for that research are and things that we should be mindful of?
Absolutely. That's a great question. The immediate implication that I see is just gaining access to these data sets, right? So because most of this data set, I mean, not even talking about the physical, um, archives, even those that have been digitized, I don't think end users or patrons of archives get access to these data sets without knowing what's in that data, right? So imagining if we have these data sets available through this mode, they can simply go in and like type in a question like if let's say if they remember something from their great grandmother or great grandfather's name, first name, last name, or something, they can just simply go in and say, can you pull up any of these records for a person named this, right? And then it'll go in and search all the database records and then come back with a list of them. And maybe it could be distributed across different collections, certificates of freedom and emissions and all of that. It can come back with some source information or citations to say, this is what I found. And like they were found in there were some hits in, like certificates of freedom and these or the individual, like which county and all of that, like they were placed as a on an ad for domestic traffic and all of that, right? So initial implication or the real right off the bat implication would be gaining access to the data set without a lot of understanding behind the scenes, right? Because when we digitize some of these physical documents, because of the nature of how it has to be transcribed and stored, we have to add some of these metadata, which then makes it like tough for the end users to actually be aware of it and then have gain some knowledge before chatting or like querying against that, right? So this is just trying to break that barrier or that layer. So they don't have to have like an IT person or someone to actually set up something from the ground up for them to actually go in and ask questions against. So especially for collections like these, the historically valuable and culturally sensitive collections, I think that access will add a lot of value. And that's what we're trying to achieve with the Maryland State Archives because they have more than one collection. And we are trying to somehow also combine or merge the data between these collections. So there is one place or one-stop shop for patrons to ask questions against, and it'll pull up wherever they are all away. I mean, they're connected or related. Does that answer that question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. No, that was a great answer. And does anyone else have any other questions or comments?
Upper.
Yeah, yeah.
No, no.
Come on over.
So what I thought, can you hear me?
Yep.
So what I thought was really interesting, this is something I'm starting to better understand as I start interacting with these tools as well, is the, what you're kind of dispelling is this notion that you could just go in and ask questions.
Yep.
You really need a lot of context about the archival collection and its background and how it was formulated, and much deeper understanding in order not just to trust the LLM, but to get a better signal. And in some sense, I think maybe it's too early to say that definitively, but you're making the case for how using these tools needs to be mitigated, perhaps by kind of traditional archival collection analysis and understanding the context and all these things that are part of the profession. And perhaps the intersection, the combination of those different methodologies and approaches will lead to these GPT tools being more accurate, more reliable companion tools to explore these collections. So I'm just curious what your thoughts are in terms of how much background and knowledge is actually needed before you can go in the driver's seat. It's almost like driving, you know, a car or the car with no driver. So before you go on that car, what is it you need to know? How do you control this environment? Otherwise, it just, as you showed, it doesn't know where to go, and
Yep.
it keeps going after the wrong fields. And that's in good times, right? It could also start generating text that is not in the collection. So just a few thoughts. I'm curious what your experience is so far.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's a great question. So the tool that I'm using right now, it's using OpenAI's GPT models, which have been trained on like internet, public internet. That's, you know, I guess the model is as good as what it's trained on, right? So if it's been trained on internet data, and the internet has a lot of not like not curated, or like, it's just people putting information in, right? And I think we have seen that happen. So OpenAI, who is creating or behind this, have been trying to add guardrails and such, and so or other model manufacturers like Anthropic and others. So they're all trying to add guardrails for it to actually retain the context and some of that based on the questions. But I don't think they are like at the point where it can be publicly open, and then you can go in and start asking questions. So I think that's where the custom GPT or more, actually in an ideal world, we need some sort of like a pre-trained model trained specifically on cultural data, right? I think this is, I guess this is more like a business right now. I mean, even though OpenAI started as a not nonprofit, but it's more like getting into the weeds of like, okay, we need to make it into a profitable business for them. But I think if we're for organizations which are vested with the archives and such, because creating or generating a model from the scratch is a very complex process, and it involves computing resources and all of that, and that's why um, you know, it's hard to create a good, robust model for each use case. But there are also models that can be created using your own laptop or something with the minimum power required. So we just have to find what the best, use case. Like, let's say if we have archives that ranges GBs and petabytes of data, then we might go through a different approach. But let's say if we only have a few thousands of records or something, then we can opt to create our own model, a large language model or small language model, they call it these days. And then they could be enough for a use case like this, right? Where you only have like few thousands of records, and then it's basically fine tuning your own model so that it kind of won't go outside of that model's data that it has learned on, and it'll just stick to the responses within that context, right? That's one way of doing this. What we have done here is sort of what's called RAG process, or retrieval augmented generation process, where there is this pre-trained model, but you are passing in reference information on top. And you're saying, okay, this is a data set, answer the questions mostly based on the data set, but if it's outside of this context, use your pre-trained knowledge. So it'll just kind of like a weighted approach where it'll use the data set you uploaded. If you don't find any information, if it does not find any information there, it'll go out and like get the information from outside. But you can also tweak some of that using prompts to say, hey, this is historically sensitive data set. Only answer questions based on the data that I uploaded and don't go outside, that sort of thing. But it's not deterministic in nature, but it kind of like will behave better and then like try to not hallucinate. Basically, that's a term with the large language models. It's associated with that, where it goes out and fetches or makes up information. But from a data analysis perspective, I think it's a trade-off that we have to, because the benefit is asking it questions in natural language and it brings back responses. One thing we can also do is the data we upload, we can try to, the column headers or something, we can make it non-ambiguous as possible so that it's able to kind of identify based on the questions that you ask. Especially what we have noticed is with dates and such, there could be many dates in a data set, right? Like there'll be add dates or like, published dates and all of that. And sometimes it could go and latch onto one of those dates and use that, for the entire conversation. So if we can like try to, I think the column headers probably easier for us to fix before we upload the data. So maybe we can tackle some of that there. But yeah, absolutely, I agree with that. It's not 100% perfect, and it's not context aware, especially the one which I'm using. But with mechanisms like RAG, there are also like fine-tuning models that we can create. But all of this needs more time and effort. There's also another piece where we kind of work with the communities to get some feedback, right? And then ask, hey, does this sound good? Like, where do you think this is going? Is this a good way to even actually have these data set collections make it available or accessible for folks? Or if this is more, I don't know what I'm doing, I'm like kind of, any end user would be wary, that sort of a thing, then we'll have to take a step back and look at a different solution. So I think, yeah, there are some options there, but again, we'll have to tread carefully.
Awesome. No, thank you so much, Dr.